Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. The last weekend before Christmas, so you can imagine how busy the shopping must be in your area or anywhere really. It's been quite busy around here, only because I think that the roads in this area are not really designed for traffic that brings in people from outside coming up through here and stuff like that. It's just what can I say, it's always congested during this time of the year because our roads are just not equipped to handle the kind of numbers that people that come through here on the Christmas season to shop. So it's been pretty hectic. There's been a few accidents around. We had a big windstorm here a couple nights ago, knocked over some trees, knocked out some power in different areas. I think in Eddington, they lost the power for a couple of days out there. Unfortunately, I didn't lose any power here. The internet stayed strong, so I was kind of like, because I'm in VZ where I did live. I mean, it was like, every time we had just a little bit of a windstorm, we'd lose the power. Or if we had any like a thunderstorm or something, we'd lose the power. But I was hoping that it wouldn't be like that here, so I was kind of surprised that we weathered the wind here, and we went through it and no power was lost, so that was good. That was good. I was watching this 60 Minutes program there on YouTube. They have their on there. They got like a 60 Minutes channel on YouTube. And I was watching, I think, their Sunday program from a week ago where they were talking about Germany and how they're arming themselves more now because of, they have fears about Russia and Putin getting aggressive and attacking Ukraine and stuff like that. And so after seeing the back and forth between Trump and Vladimir Zelensky, I think it was at that point where Germany said, you know what, we can't depend on the United States to defend us if Russia decides they're going to come over here in force and attack us. So because Germany is the third largest economy on that, in Europe and stuff, they took it on themselves to start building up their military, which they've been doing. And the point of the person from 60 Minutes that was talking to the premier in Germany was trying to say, well, the rest of the world is still nervous. I mean, after World War II, people are a little bit unsettled at the fact of Germany building its military back up again, okay, after they've been sort of pacifists for so long. But, their response to that was, well, if you give a shit at all about, the kind of life we live here, then you're going to have to take steps to defend it from people who don't agree. And since, we have a president over here that doesn't seem to give a shit about what happens to anything happening around the world. In fact, he's got his hand in making things worse. We can't look to them. And logically, I think they make a good point, because the UN isn't really doing anything. So, I mean, they've kind of left it up to the hands of the countries. Now, Germany's not the only one that's building up their military. Japan is also building up its military. They just unleashed another aircraft carrier. They say they don't have planes on it, they have helicopters on it, but it's easy to just swap out one for the other, right? No. People say, well, I thought they couldn't have a military. Well, that was only put in their constitution over there, that they would not have one in there. It was not an agreement, okay, that they made, that, you know, Japan will never have a military. No, it was their you know, them saying to the world that we won't be a threat anymore. But now they're under, you know, the eye of China and stuff like that, and they don't feel safe over there either, and they know the United States isn't going to help them either. So they're building up their military now. So now they got 2 aircraft carriers, and God only knows what else they're going to start building over there, you know. So it's like, you know, Trump in his fucking big mouth, okay, with his big mouth, that day he was sitting here arguing with Vladimir Zelensky on public television, no less. He set the whole goddamn world back at least 50 fucking years. Okay? You see what I'm saying about how one person can fuck up a goddamn iron ball? Okay, that's what he's done. That's why Trump is not the guy that could be a president, because he doesn't have the qualifications. He doesn't have the scope to understand that his actions have consequences. Okay, even fighting with somebody from another country has consequences. So now you got, you know, Europe building up military because they can't look to the United States anymore to help with the defending Europe. Okay, and Japan is worried because of China being aggressive. You remember they've been saying for a long time China wants to get Taiwan, and you know, Japan doesn't want that to happen, and they don't feel like they can trust the United States to be able to, you know, defend their, you know, what's important to them. So, like I said, it's very disquieting to see how the United States has shrunk, you know, in standing in the world because of this jackass that we have sitting in the White House. And I feel like, you know, like I said, whenever the time comes when he's not in there anymore, it's going to take decades to undo the damage that motherfucker did in just 1 year. It's going to take decades, people. I'm not exaggerating, because it's, you know, we're going to have to build up our image again as being somebody you can trust, as being somebody, as an icon of democracy. We're going to have to fix all of that, and that's not going to happen overnight, because the reason why, we still got assholes in you know, in our country that are politicians who are still MAGA loyalists, and they will get what they want whether Trump is the president or not. Their agenda is clear. So we're always going to have opposition from the right wing, even when we're trying to fix the damage that one of their own did to this country. You see what I'm saying? That's the problem here. That's the reason why it's going to take decades to undo this, to get back to where we were just a year ago. You know, I know it sounds disheartening. And for a lot of you people out there, you're not going to live long enough to see us get back to where we were a year ago. Those days for you are gone. You're never going to see that again. Okay? I probably won't see that again. Okay? The good days under Joe Biden, we're never going to see that again. Not in our lifetime anyway, because it's going to take forever to get back to where we were. In fact, we're still going to be in the state of recovering from the pandemic, because this guy is cutting all the fucking lifelines to states that were trying to recover from that. So, like I said, you know, it was really upsetting for me to see that, you know, these other countries now don't see the United States anymore as, you know, as some sort of, you know, safety net, basically, for the world. That if some foreign power decides they want to attack, the United States may not be there. In fact, they might even help the foreign power to take over the world because of the kind of thinking we got going on in our government. So, yeah, so like I said, it was, it was difficult to watch that and see how they're acting. I mean, Germany's coming up with all kinds of innovative ways now of defending their country. I mean, they were showing them working with these giant cockroaches that they got by putting devices on them to control them. At reason being, they can get them to have like cameras or something so they can infiltrate areas and see. And they're trying to shrink the devices down to the point where they're really, you can't see them on the bodies of the roaches. Those are the big roaches that hiss. I think they're, I don't know what country they're. I think Africa or something like that. They're big. So they took those and they're experimenting with them to see if they can do something with that. I mean, it's kind of off the wall. I know that, but drones are another thing that they're creating drones now. It seems like every country now is going to be having drones as part of their military weapons and stuff like that. And they're training more troops. They just graduated a class of officers over there. They set up their version of a Pentagon in Germany. So they're taking it serious. What they saw Trump doing, they're seeing America as a whole declining, and they can't be relied on. We can't be relied on anymore. And that's really what's happened here, is that the rest of the world has taken our cue that, okay, well, the United States doesn't want to be part of the fucking equation anymore. They just want to sit in isolation with, be xenophobic or whatever the hell they want to be, because, the proof is in the pudding. They're electing idiots for leaders over there, and these idiots are dragging the country down, and the people seem to be happy with that, from their point of view. Not ours, but theirs, okay? Because they see what's going on over here, and they, like I say, when you're an outsider looking in, you have the luxury to generalize everybody, saying they're all that way, okay? But because they're not living here, they can't see the nuances and say, well, only some of the people are that way. But overseas, what they're seeing is that, well, if they're electing that for their government, then that means they're all that way, you see? So that's why a lot of this stuff is happening, is because they're looking at what our situation here is from the outside, and they're saying that, oh, well, America's just, as a whole, is on a decline. We don't know what the hell's the matter with the American people. They've lost their fucking mind. Hey, you can't blame them for thinking that. But they, like I say, their experience isn't about how life is in this country. It's about how they live in their own. So, okay, here's this little article here from The Nation. Why Jeffrey Epstein's links to the CIA are so important. Quote, on November 18, Donald Trump suffered a major political defeat when the House of Representatives passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act by a nearly unanimous vote, 427 to 1. But while emphatic, the House measure included a significant provision that might yet prevent a full reckoning with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. But the final version specified that the Department of Justice must make public all unclassified documents on Epstein. The word unclassified potentially gives Trump and the CIA wide latitude to hold back Epstein-related materials that they claim are too sensitive to release. Epstein almost certainly had close ties to U.S. intelligence agencies and Israel's intelligence agencies, as Massey put it to reporters on November the 19th. The fact that the American and Israel security states appeared to have worked with so toxic a figure is deeply disturbing, embarrassing to those in power, and a major reason why the full extent of Epstein's activities continues to be concealed. Epstein was a power player in global politics, a kind of diplomat without portfolio, with better access to the wealthy and politically powerful than most real ambassadors. One way to understand him is as a product of a hyper-privatized neoliberal age. Just as much of the policing of the American empire is now done by private military companies, notably Constellus, formerly known as Academy, and Blackwater. Billionaires like Epstein have their own private foreign policy. Whatever work Epstein did with the CIA or the Mossad would have been as a peer rather than an employee. Epstein and Barack were masters of what Naomi Klein and others have called disaster capitalism, profiting from the desperation of those in power. But it is unlikely they could have done this without the complicity of American intelligence. That's why Epstein's intelligence ties are central to understanding his crimes. Yeah, well, all that being said, that doesn't mean that he should get away with what he did. Okay, obviously he used those ties to do his fucking sex trafficking. Okay, which implicates a lot of people outside the borders of the United States. Okay, that could be, another big reason why, our Justice Department is really hoping nobody will fucking look at these files. Okay, and even though some of these things that have been released have been heavily redacted, there's still enough left open in there to suggest that there was some pretty hefty fucking crimes being committed there. And so I just don't see how, them trying to constantly use the excuse that, oh, this national security, when it comes, people are going to want to know, why is national security and Jeffrey Epstein go hand in hand? This guy was a playboy by all what we know of this man. Why was he involved in anything political? Okay. I mean, that's kind of what, on the surface, it's like, well, Donald Trump wasn't really political just, before he decided he wanted to get into politics and run against Barack Obama, okay? Jeffrey Epstein was really a nobody before that. Nobody really knew him unless you lived in New York City or something, but nobody really knew Jeffrey Epstein, okay? And the fact that he was hanging around with a loser like Donald Trump doesn't suggest that this guy really, had any fucking brains. So whatever dealings this man had internationally could not have been on the up and up, okay? Didn't have to involve national security, all right? If it was, then certainly the places that he went and all that would have some measure of United States government backing it or something, okay? But from what it just said, he was a man of his own, going around doing things, okay, making deals and stuff like that. And the Justice Department simply turned a blind eye to what he was doing. But now, when we want to try to implicate or try to prove that our president, was involved in some nefarious crimes, all of a sudden now everything is hush hush. Okay, so my thing is that they're just saying this to make excuses for why everything is going to be redacted, why Trump's name isn't going to appear on much of anything else, any photographs that'll disappear, and they'll just say, oh, well, we couldn't release that because of national security. They're trying to build up Epstein into something more than what he was. I think that's what it is. I feel like this is, look, the guy ain't around to defend himself or to really tell the truth, so they can do it and say anything they want about Epstein. All right? And believe me, there's a lot of high-profile, wealthy people out there who are mixed up in this fucking shit. And they are exerting a lot of influence in our government right now to keep as much hidden as possible. Okay? Let's lay that out on the table, too. It ain't just one man. Okay? It's a lot of men. Okay? And there's a lot going on. There's a lot that went on there. Jesus, we brought down somebody from the royal house in England, for Christ's sake, because of what did get leaked out. So you can only imagine who else is in that list. But the thing is like I said, what's going on, I think, is that they're trying to spin this as Epstein was so heavily involved with our CIA and all that. And it's like, Epstein, CIA, does that really make any sense to you? Okay. I'm sorry, but that's like, you know, saying, you know, trying to say Donald Trump was a secret agent for, you know, or you know, it's like, give me a break. We're talking about a friggin' pedophile here, all right? I don't give a shit what excuses they want to come up with. I want to see everything, and I think the public has a right to see everything, unredacted, photographs, warts, everything. We need to see it all. If the truth is ever going to get out about this man's crimes, everything's got to come out. And I don't care who it involves, Democrats, Republicans, priests. I don't give a shit. Everything has to come out, because this global system of sex trafficking has got to come to an end. And that means everybody involved in it, wealthy or not, they need to go down with it. And if we have to do all this stuff to protect the president and protect the government from collapsing, then it ain't worth saving. The president ain't worth saving. If we have to exist on with burying these kind of crimes under the rug, along with all the other fucking crimes that this country's ever committed in its past. Okay, I'm sorry, but that rug is bulging. Okay, it's like a landfill now, and it's time to clean house. And that means we got to start here and now. We need to start with this and go back. Go back. Really, if we really want the image of this country to improve, the rest of the world is going to have to see us coming to the table and say, we want a house cleaning. We want it now. Okay? Zelensky had to do that recently during this war that they're going. He had to do a house cleaning of his own because there was corruption. People were getting kickbacks in there from war profiting. Okay? So he had to get rid of a whole bunch of people. All right? We have to be willing to do the same in our government, no matter who it involves. No matter who it involves. Because a government that you leave corrupted does not do anything right. It's always going to do things corrupted. And people have a hard time swallowing the crimes, of Epstein and possibly Trump also being mixed up in it. If you have a hard time trying to wrap your head around that and accept it, then obviously you have to agree that a house cleaning is in order here. We have to go through this. We have to see everything. And no Republican is ever going to be able to defend Donald Trump, okay, with nothing to bring to the table. Because people are going to demand more than just hearsay and bumper sticker slogans when it comes to defending a guy that's possibly involved with pedophilia and rape and whatever. Okay, no one's going to be, the other side comes to the table with all these fucking question marks, but the other side defending him comes to the table with nothing. Just lies and distraction and redaction. Okay? They don't want to bring anything to the table because they're afraid of what we'll see. That in itself tells you there's something there. There's a lot of smoke there, possibly some fire. Okay? That they've gone this long, this year, they've taken all this time, and we still haven't seen it all. And now they're trying to tell us, oh, well, Epstein is he was a CIA operative and stuff. Come on. I ain't buying that fucking story. And like I said, anything coming out of the White House now, you got to question. You have to question. If you're smart, you're not going to just take what they tell you at face value. Okay? Just remember what's at stake here. If all this truth comes out, just remember what's at stake. So there's a lot of interest in keeping us waiting, keeping us distracted, keeping us second-guessing ourselves. Don't fall for it. Stay the course. Demand the evidence. See the truth. That's what we have to do. All right, here's this other article here. Freshman Democrat under attack for standing up to the GOP. Nellie Powell has only been in Congress a few months, but she's already facing a barrage of GOP attacks for voting against their destructive budget bill that would hand out huge tax breaks to the wealthy while raising taxes on working families. Just a few days ago, The NRCC issued an error-filled press release written by big business lobbyists that falsely smeared her with lies. She's one of the few Democrats to win her seat in a county that voted for Trump. She's going to need all the help she can get if we want to protect the must-hold seat and retake Congress. Yeah, you know, because look, they know it's crunch time. You know, the Republicans know it's crunch time, and a lot of them are already predicting losses, huge losses next year during the midterms. Okay, I'm hearing that a lot now. People you wouldn't expect to hear it from, in fact. But yeah, they're really, thanks to Trump, I think, on a lot of reasons, but also thanks to the people that Trump appointed. I mean, he couldn't have done it all alone. He had other idiots around him that really muddied up the waters for MAGA. And so now Republicans they're doing everything that they have in their playbook, which is always a bunch of dishonest attacks. Okay, they're hoping they can minimize the damage next year. And it's up to us to say, look, we're not minimizing nothing. Okay, you failed us. The Republican Party has failed this country miserably. You let extremists into your party. They took it over. Now you people aren't really a Republican Party anymore. Okay, you should call yourself something else. We call you MAGA now because that's basically what you are now. You're just a bunch of ass kissers for Trump. You don't care about making America great again because up to now you haven't succeeded in one thing in making this country better. In fact, you guys don't want to hear it. That people have lost their health insurance and they've lost their jobs, and you know, you guys don't want to hear it. You say fuck them. You know, we're making America great. Well, you keep jumping up on that fucking statement, but you got no proof to back it up. Still, after a year, still. So, yeah. So they're going to pull out all the fucking, you know, typical attack smear campaigns and all that shit from here on out. And they're going to hope that something sticks with the public's mind. But I'll tell you what's going to counter that. Okay, and it won't be you trying to do anything. It's going to be Trump doing what he's doing. Every time they try to attack a Democrat, okay, and smear them, Trump's going to turn around and one-up that. So that way people won't be so affected by the lies being told by MAGA. They're going to be enraged to get rid of anybody associated with Trump or anybody as a part of MAGA. So, you know, they're really fighting an uphill battle here. You know, a lot of these people were saying, you know, months back, okay, that if Trump didn't stop what he was doing, that they were gonna lose all that they had gained in the election. And they were right. And these were Republicans that were saying that. They were right. Okay, that's why a lot of those same people who said that had resigned early this year. They had resigned and retired, you know, or just retired, whatever you want to call it. They just left because they knew that their party was just going to be belligerent, and their whole purpose was to tear down the country. They didn't want to be a part of that. Some of these Republicans actually gave a shit about this country and didn't want to see these things happen, but instead of sticking around and fighting the battle, they left, which I think is kind of cowardly, if you ask me. This is the time when saner voices should have stayed, I think, because when you leave all the nuts in charge, with nobody, you know, trying to keep them under control, these people are just going to do whatever the fuck they want, and you know, and they won't care what happens to everybody. So, yeah. So as you know, this lady and other people from in Congress or, you know, and Democrats are being attacked, and they will be. Especially, it's going to get worse next year. So I hope you guys are ready for that. You're going to hear a lot of shit next year about Democrats. But it's all in vain, I think, because, like I said, at the end of the day, what Trump does or doesn't do is what's going to weigh more on people's minds than what some congressman may or may not have done or what they are being accused of. Because right now, the reason that the Republicans are going to be looking at big losses is because of Trump, Not because of what a congressman is being accused of or did or didn't do. It's going to be what Trump is accused of and what he did or didn't do. We always look at the guy at the top. He set the standard that everybody else has followed under him. And this is where it led us. So, you get rid of the guy at the top, okay, then things will change. But it won't change that way. You have to take out all the minions underneath him. So that way it's easier to get the guy off the top. Okay? So that's the way, the voters are going to look at this. Okay? And I'm hoping a lot of people just will ignore the bullshit that's going to come out from whatever. And I hope the Democrats don't get discouraged and think, oh, I'm not going to vote because we ain't going to win. You ain't going to have that excuse. You're not going to be allowed to sit this one out. Okay? The only way you're going to sit this out is if Trump somehow decides, no, we're not going to have midterms this year. Okay? Only then. But other than that, I don't care if you're half dead. I don't care if you got a cold. I don't care if you're dying from cancer. You will show up at those polls and vote. Okay? Because in unity we have strength. If every Democrat gets out and votes, okay, it don't matter how much they tamper with the election this year, okay, the results will be overwhelming. There won't be a way to say, well, no, we can't count these or we can't. No, it ain't going to matter. At the end, Democrats always outnumber the Republicans when it comes to voters. We've always had the majority. But no, 100% of the country doesn't vote in any election. So that's one of the reasons why, we keep ending up with the wrong leaders, is that people don't assert themselves when they should. Every election is important. Don't let anybody kid you by saying, oh, the one party's as bad as the other. That's an excuse to give you a reason not to vote. That's bullshit. They can't prove that, and neither could I. Okay, there's always been one party worse than the other. Sure, Democrats have made their mistakes down the years, but they have never, ever tried to destroy the working man, okay, by cutting their fucking legs out from under them when in times bad, okay? They've never done that. Okay, they're the ones that always created the programs to help people. Republicans have always opposed any fucking thing that helps the regular average American, the blue collar workers. Okay, they've always opposed everything. And we know who they support. They make it very clear to us. They don't hide it. So in this situation where the working class are really suffering heavy now under Trump, there's no doubt where you have to go. Okay? Don't empower the wealthy even more. Okay? They got enough wealth. They don't need any more. What we got to do is we got to start helping out everybody else, because a country can't exist where all the wealth exists at the top 1% and everybody else gets nothing. Okay, that's a recipe for disaster, and it's happening all around us. Okay, so we got to stop that. All right, let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Roxy Sugar, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
All of you women making fun of Carolyn Levitt in her Vanity Fair cover should be ashamed of yourselves. You're not, but you should be. Because the reality is, secure women don't tear other women down based on their appearance. They lift each other up. And y'all are somehow justifying it because she's a conservative woman. And that speaks more about your inner character than it does any flaws that are on Carolyn's face.
Amy Lou, I just gotta come right out and ask. Are you fucking with me right now?
'Cause you have to be, right? This video you made is satire, right? 'Cause there is no way that you hold random women on the internet to a higher standard than the President of the United States, Donald Trump, a man you support, a man you voted for. But I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt because it's Christmas. And that's my gift to you. And maybe you've been living in a fucking hole for the past, I don't know, 30 years. And if that's the case, let me catch you up to speed. Bear with me, there's a lot. This one is very recent. Donald Trump calling a reporter piggy and ugly. He's called women horseface, crazy, low IQ. He called Rosie O'Donnell disgusting, both inside and out. If you take a look at her, she's a slob. If I were running The View, I'd fire Rosie. I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers. On former Miss Universe, Alicia Machado, she was the worst we ever had, though absolute worst. She was impossible. She gained a massive amount of weight, and it was a real problem. She gained 10 pounds. Heidi Klum, sadly, she's no longer at 10. Ariana Huffington is unattractive, both inside and out. I fully understand why her former husband left her for a man. During a legal deposition, a woman requested a break to pump breast milk for her infant. Donald Trump's response, you're disgusting. On Kim Kardashian, does she have a good body? No. Does she have a fat ass? Absolutely. On Lindsay Lohan, who at the time of this interview had just turned 18 years old. Trump says, there's something there, right? But you have to like freckles. I've seen, close-up of her chest and a lot of freckles. Are you into freckles? On Carly Fiorina, look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president? Amy Lou, there are hundreds of more examples, and there's no time for it. So now, I have to ask you, Amy Lou, since you are so concerned with people's inner character, do you justify him saying these things because he's a man, or do you justify it because he's a Republican? The funny part about your video is that I agree with the sentiment. Women shouldn't tear other women down. But there are many ways to tear other women down other than attacking their looks. You tear other women down when you vote for a man who has said things like this. So you have to excuse me if I find the opportunity that you took to have some kind of moral superiority laughable. Because what I'm not going to do today, Amy Lou, since I don't have the fucking patience, is take any finger wagging about feminism from a fucking Trump supporter. Anyways, bye!
It's beginning to look like Trump's last Christmas won't make it through the year. As his ankles begin to swell, it's affecting his heart as well. He can't regenerate that like his ear. It's beginning to look like Trump's last Christmas. He will falsify. As he's standing there on his plane, he keeps bragging about his brain. Perfect MRI. As he continues to choke down fried chicken and coke, his doctors report on his youth. Cholesterol numbers and afternoon slumbers reveal that it isn't the truth. And we can't wait until it's time to use the voting booth. It's beginning to look like Trump's last Christmas. His cognitive decline. He keeps bragging about the test and claiming it was the best. We know that for dementia that's a sign. It's beginning to look like Trump's last Christmas, and given half a chance, when invoking the 25th, you know who we're then stuck with. Yes, it's J.D. Vance.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, so I have this other little article here. Let's see, this is from The Intercept. The quote-unquote warrior dividend is Trump's latest PR stunt to pretend he cares about the troops. This was written by Alan Stevens. On December the 17th, Donald Trump took the stage and announced in a bizarre, rambling speech, which all his speeches are bizarre and rambling, so, what he framed as a gift to America's troops, a one-time 1,776 warrior dividend, a 1776 payment pitched as gratitude for service members and veterans, wrapped in Revolutionary War imagery and just in time for the holidays. The promise was sold as proof that Trump takes care of our warriors. But, and there's a but here, beneath the applause and bunting, the announcement amounted to another empty Trump-branded PR exercise. In reality, what Trump sold as a Christmas warrior dividend wasn't a new benefit at all. As Politico reported, the money came from a military housing stipend Congress had already approved months earlier to address lagging quality of life conditions for service members. Under Trump, that benefit was simply rebranded, repackaged, and redelivered, not as a right earned through service, but as a personal gift bestowed from above. Among veterans, the reaction was sharper and darker. Former service members joked the dividend felt like a steak and lobster deployment dinner, the old military omen. When leadership suddenly splurges, bad news usually follows. Combat veteran and military accountability activist Greg Stoker summed it up more bluntly on Instagram, calling the announcement, quote, corny as hell, unquote, a sentiment echoed across veteran circles who've learned to distrust flashy gestures that arrive just before cuts, purges, or new demands. That context matters. Trump's sudden burst of generosity comes after years of deliberate harm to veterans, military families, and the institutions meant to support them. Set against that record, the warrior dividend isn't gratitude, it's the latest insult. For $1,776, a number that barely covers a month's rent in much of the country, Trump seems to believe he can purchase loyalty, silence, dissent, and paper over structural harm. Yeah, well, that's him again trying to pretend that he's doing something nice, okay? But I think we all still remember how we felt about those people who died in World War II. Suckers, okay, remember he called them suckers. He doesn't really give a shit about veterans, you know. He hasn't proved that. And the fact that, you know, earlier this year he wanted to have a parade in his honor. Okay, so he can pretend that he's a dictator, and that didn't satisfy him. You know, I mean, he looks at the military as a big fucking game or a toy to play with, okay? And the suckers and losers that he calls them are just that in his mind. So he saw an opportunity here to take what was originally passed to help veterans by Congress, and he's trying to say, oh, I'm giving you this. I'm doing this for you. Trying to claim ownership of something he didn't do. Just like that goddamn medal that he got there for whatever the hell they gave it to him for, okay, Peace Prize or whatever. Again, trying to claim something, ownership of something he never accomplished. That's what this guy does. You know, he's a grifter. He goes around and oh, I want a medal for this, or I want credit for that, and, you know, you're just going to tell him, you know, and it's like, this guy, he's got such a inflated opinion of himself. He really thinks he's something. But if you look close at this man's background, this guy's story, you're going to find that this man really has nothing at all worth valuing, okay? He's a guy that's got wealth, and that's really all he's going to be really noted for, okay? And that wealth he didn't earn. He got that from, you know, family wealth that he's been blowing. And he can't do a business. 7 times he went bankrupt. I mean, Christ, I mean, you know, if he had any education at all in business, I mean, you know, something would have stuck. But Christ, and then all the scandals, the corruption and stuff before getting into the White House. I mean, Christ, it's just, this guy is really bad news, you know. And it's like he wants people to believe what he tells them about what he did or didn't do, or, you know, he's begging people to please buy what I'm selling you, please, you know, believe what I tell you. You know, he stands there holding a Bible upside down, trying to take credit. You know, it's like, why? You know, the job of the presidency isn't to be a public image or to be somebody who has to be larger than life. Okay. If that was the case, then none of us would be able to run for the office, only a certain few, okay? But as it's written out, anybody is, if you're an American, you can run. If you can't, if you think you can win, you can run. But no, that's not enough. Trump wants to be more than just that. He wants to be, you know, larger than life. He wants his face on Mount Rushmore. He wants buildings with his name on it, okay? Trying to claim prestige where there isn't any. Trying to create this image of a great man that lived in this country when he wasn't. You know, and his family really isn't. You know, like I said, it's a sad commentary on this country that a man like that could so easily get himself in the position of the highest office in the land by lying his way into it. Okay, and we all fell for it. I really thought that we had more, after 1 year I mean, after his first term, that we learned our lesson from him. I really thought that was the case. And I thought, you know, when Kamala ran last year, this would have been the time for a woman to get in there, because the country wouldn't be stupid enough to put him back in there. You know, but boy, was I taught in education here that misogyny and racism still weigh heavy in this country, and that if you're going to run for, you better be a man, you better be a white man if you're going to run against somebody, okay? Because even if you're running against a dead man, if that dead man is white, the dead man is going to win. Okay, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the logic here. So we got a lot of growing up still yet to do in this country in order to dig ourselves out of that fucking ancient caveman thinking, you know, that goes on in this country. We got a long way to go still. Other countries are still ahead of us on that score, because other countries have had female leaders, and we can't seem to get one in there, even if we're running them against a dead man. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. This is why I say, you know, Trump is trying to reach and grab for things, okay, that he didn't earn. You can't do that. You just can't do it. Historians are going to remember all that, and that's what's going to be written about you, not what was given to you, you know, a medal made from Timu. Okay, they're not going to, that's not what people are going to write about you. They're going to tell you the story of what happened that led to that. Okay, and then the future generations are going to laugh their silly asses off, saying, boy, how stupid people were back then. All right, here's this story here from the AP, written by Melanie Lidman, entitled, Israel's Cabinet Approves 19 New Jewish Settlements in the Occupied West Bank. Israel's cabinet has approved a proposal for 19 new Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank, the far-right finance minister said on Sunday, as the government pushes ahead with a construction binge in the territory that further threatens the possibility of a Palestinian state. That brings the total number of new settlements over the past few years to 69, a new record, according to Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who has pushed a settlement expansion agenda in the West Bank. The latest ones include two that were previously evacuated during a 2005 disengagement plan. The approval increases the number of settlements in the West Bank by nearly 50% during the current far-right government's tenure. In 2022, there were 141 settlements across the West Bank. After the latest approval, there are 210, according to Peace Now, an anti-settlement watchdog group. Settlements are widely considered illegal under the international law. Smotrich's office said the cabinet approval came on December 11th and that the development had been classified until now. The approval comes as the U.S. pushes Israel and Hamas to move ahead with the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire, which took effect on October the 10th. The U.S. brokered plan calls for a possible quote-unquote pathway to a Palestinian state, something the settlements are aimed at preventing. The cabinet decision included a retroactive legalization of some previously established settlement outposts or neighborhoods of existing settlements and the creation of settlements on land where Palestinians were evacuated, the finance ministry said. Settlements can range in size, from a single dwelling to a collection of high-rises. The ministry said two of the settlements legalized in the latest approval are Kadim and Ganem, which were two of the four West Bank settlements dismantled in 2005 as part of Israel's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. There have been multiple attempts to resettle them after Israel's government in March 2023 repealed a 2005 act that evacuated the four outposts and barred Israel's from entering the area. Israel captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza areas claimed by the Palestinians for a future state in the 1967 war. it has settled over 500,000 Jews in the West Bank, in addition to over 200,000 in contested East Jerusalem. Israel's government is dominated by far-right proponents on the settler movement, including Smotrich and Cabinet Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, I guess, who oversees the nation's police force. Settler expansion has been compounded by a surge of attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank in recent months. During October's olive harvest, settlers across the territory launched an average of 8 attacks daily, the most since the United Nations Humanitarian Office began collecting data in 2006. The attacks continued in November, with the UN recording at least 136 more by November the 24th. Settlers burned cars, desecrated mosques, ransacked industrial plants, and destroyed cropland. Israel authorities have done little beyond issuing occasional condemnations of the violence. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Ramallah said 2 Palestinians, including a 16-year-old, were killed in clashes with Israel's military on Saturday night in the northern part of the West Bank. Israel's military said a militant was shot and killed after he threw a block at troops in Kabatia, and another militant was killed after he hurled explosives at troops operating in the town of Silat al-Hariyata. The Palestinian Health Ministry identified the Palestinian killed in Kabatia as 16-year-old Ryan Abu Mullah. Palestinian media aired brief security footage of the incident where the youth appears to emerge from an alley and is shot by troops as he approaches them without throwing anything. Israel's military said the incident is under review. The health ministry identified the second man as Ahmad Ziyud, 22. Israel's military has scaled up military operations in the West Bank since October the 7th, 2023, Hamas-led attack that triggered the war in Gaza. The top Catholic leader in the Holy Land visited Gaza's only Catholic church and celebrated a pre-Christmas Mass on Sunday that included the baptism of a baby. Dozens of Palestinians gathered in the Holy Family Parish. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa is on his 4th visit to Gaza since the war began. Pizzaballa? Okay, and said the Christian community aims to be a, quote, stable, solid reference point in this sea of destruction, unquote, as rebuilding slowly begins. Quote, it is different this time, unquote, Pizzaballa said. Quote, I saw the new desire for a new life, unquote. The Holy Family compound was hit by fragments from an Israel shell in July, killing 3 people in what Israel called an accident and expressed regret over. The parish has served as a refuge for Christians and Muslims, sheltering hundreds of displaced people. There was a mix of gratitude and grief as people at the church marked Christmas away from home. Quote, they welcomed us with great love and respect, unquote, said Nazia Lem Habashi, 78 years old, who stays there with his family. Quote, this is the 3rd holiday we are marking since the war, unquote. Quote, God willing, life will improve, unquote, added a 67-year-old Najla Sabah. So, yeah, Israel's just, pushing through. I don't care what, they're just building here, building there. They're basically just trying to run the Palestinians out of the area, okay, by building stuff. And they're trying to fight back by, attacks and stuff like that. This is all, in lieu of Netanyahu's plan of turning Gaza into an extension of Israel. Illegal or not, okay, doesn't matter. He's doing what he wants. It's like, this is why Trump likes the guy, I think, or at least can understand him, is that Netanyahu and Trump are like one and the same. I mean, neither one of them gives a shit about the laws, and they're going to do what they want. And all I can say is, if you live in this new area that's being built for you know, Jewish people, plan on leaving quick, because that's going to be a focal point for terrorist acts now. Okay, Palestinians are not going to let that slide. They're gonna, what they'll do is they're just going to wait until everybody figures that it's safe. They're going to move in. They're going to start, and then all of a sudden things are going to start blowing up over there. Okay, and this, it doesn't end anything. You see, this is the whole thing about this whole history with these people, both sides, is that instead of working as diligently as they are at fighting each other, instead of working to try to resolve their differences, okay, the fighting continues. It doesn't matter who wins the fight or who loses the fight. The fact is whoever, you know, is there is going to be a target for terrorism. Terrorism doesn't have an end. Okay, it really doesn't. It's terrorism by itself is an eye for an eye, which means it never stops. And until they can figure out a way to resolve their differences, the terrorism is not going to stop. So Israel can sit and plant their flags all over Gaza all they want, but hey, that's just going to be more area for terrorism to begin. All right, they're never going to know peace over there. Not with leaders like Netanyahu. Okay, people who are just saying, I don't care anymore about what the other side wants, where it's genocide, we're going to get what we want out of that area, that's going to be ours. Okay, I don't care what they do. With an attitude like that, you're going to be constantly on the defensive. Your people are never going to be safe living there. Okay, I don't understand why anybody would want to live there. If you're a Jew, why would you want to live in that fucking hellhole? Really? Honestly, I mean, unless you don't care about your life, I mean, go ahead. But, you know, what point is there in living in a country that nobody can sit, you know, and relax without worrying about a fucking Tomahawk missile or something getting rammed up your butt? I mean, it's ridiculous. You're living in a war zone, and it's never going to stop. Okay? You could build a nice, pretty house, and a year from now, it could be rubble. You know, it's just, I don't get it. Honestly, is it really that important to be there, to become a target? You know, and the same could be said for the Palestinians. Is it worth all the lives that you have lost up to that point to get that piece of land? Really? I know it might say something in your religion that you have it, but you know what? That's not the way the world works today. Religions don't tell you where you can live. People buy land. People will fight for land. That's the way it works, okay? That's the way the world works. We don't take a holy book or something like that and say, well, it was said to us and promised that we were supposed to have that. No government's going to recognize that. Okay, that's just your little book. Okay, but if you want it, you're going to have to get it like everybody else does in this world. Okay, and it ain't always going to be through fighting. It's going to be about negotiation. I mean, look at what's happening in Ukraine. Okay, they had land, right? That it was their own country before, after it was unabsorbed from the Soviet Union. Okay, they became their own little country, and now Russia wants it back. Okay, they're not going by what was written in a book, a holy book or something like that. They're going by what the leader of that country wants. That's the way that works today. So if you're going to go by your book versus their book, okay, that, you know, I'm not talking about holy books. If you're going to go take your holy book and try to put it over the other holy book, that's why you're going to have an endless fight. Because there's no common ground in that. You can't bring these two sides together. Okay, because the books won't allow it. Okay, so you have to put those things away for the sake of peace and come to a table and work your differences out. Both have to lose something, but both can gain something. That's the way it's got to work. Otherwise, you're just pissing in the wind, both of yous. Okay, you know, and that's the way I see this thing. I don't care, you know, really what their religious texts tell them about the land that they're on or something. I don't care. That was written at a time before most of the world hadn't been carved up into little states and countries, okay? You know, that was, nobody had any comprehension of that ever being something of an issue, okay? So their philosophy then does not apply today, okay? But I just wish that, you know, cooler heads could prevail in that. And certainly mixing Trump into this thing is not the best thing to do. And not, you know, I'm sorry, but that's putting the devil in hell there, you know. And no, not a good thing to do. And I'm glad that Zelensky isn't following Trump's logic, because clearly he would be losing ground by clinging hope to Trump doing. You know, he'd lose things under Trump. Trump's doesn't care about Zelensky. He does care more about Putin, and so in that regard, Putin would stand to gain more with Trump's help. So Zelensky doesn't really have an ally in the United States anymore now. I mean, unfortunately, when we change presidents, we also change direction. So, yeah. All right, here's another one from the AP. U.S. forces stop oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela as Trump follows up on promise to seize tankers. U.S. forces on Saturday, that would be yesterday, stopped an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela for the second time in less than 2 weeks as Trump continues to ramp up pressure on Venezuelan President Maduro. The pre-dawn operation comes days after Trump announced a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers coming in and out of South American country and follows the December 10th seizure by American forces of an oil tanker off the Venezuelan coast. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem confirmed that the U.S. Coast Guard, with help from the Defense Department, stopped the oil tanker that was last docked in Venezuela. She also posted on social media an unclassified video of a U.S. helicopter landing personnel on a vessel called Centuries. A crude oil tanker flying under the flag of Panama operates under the name and was recently spotted near the Venezuelan coast, according to Marine Traffic, a project that tracks the movement of vessels around the globe using publicly available data. It was not immediately clear if the vessel was under U.S. sanctions. Quote, the United States will continue to pursue the illicit movement of sanctioned oil that is used to fund narco-terrorism in the region, unquote, Noem wrote on X. Quote, we will find you and we will stop you, unquote. The action was a, quote, consented boarding, unquote, with the tanker stopping voluntarily and allowing U.S. forces to board it. That's a fucking lie, according to a U.S. official. Yeah, a Trump official who was not authorized to comment publicly and spoke on the condition of anonymity. Again, well, I'm giving you a lie, but I didn't say it, and The reasoning for the seizure of the Centuries is far less clear than it was with the first tanker, the Skipper, which was known to be part of a shadow fleet of tankers that operates on the fringes of the law to move sanctioned cargo and was not even flying a nation's flag when it was seized by the Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard. White House Deputy Press Secretary Ann Kelly claimed in an online post Saturday that the Centuries was a similarly close, quote, falsely flagged vessel operating as part of the Venezuelan shadow fleet to traffic stolen oil, unquote, and that the oil it was carrying was sanctioned. However, Dr. Salvatore Mercogliano, a maritime historian and merchant shipping expert at Campbell University, said that according to several shipping industry databases, the Centuries appeared to be operating legally. Quote, everything indicates that she is a properly registered vessel, unquote, Mirko Gilani said. Though he did note that it's almost certain that the Centuries took on a load of sanctioned oil. To Mirko Gliano, even despite the fact that the Centuries was carrying oil that was subject to sanctions, the seizure is, quote, a big escalation, unquote. You know, shit. Quote, this one is meant to scare other tankers away, unquote, he added. Venezuela's government, in a statement Saturday, characterized the U.S. forces' actions as, quote-unquote, criminal, and vowed to not let them, quote, go unpunished, unquote, by pursuing various legal avenues, including by filing complaints with the United Nations Security Council. Quote, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela categorically denounces and rejects the theft and hijacking of another private vessel transporting Venezuelan oil, as well as the enforced disappearance of its crew, perpetrated by United States military personnel in international waters, unquote, according to the statement. Trump followed the first tanker seizure of a vessel named the Skipper this month, vowed that the U.S. would carry out a blockade of Venezuela. It all comes as Trump has ratcheted up his rhetoric toward Maduro and warned that the longtime Venezuelan leader's days in power are numbered. And the president this week demanded that Venezuela return assets that it seized from U.S. oil companies years ago, justifying anew his announcement of a, quote, blockade, unquote, against oil tankers traveling to or from the South American country that face American sanctions. Trump cited the lost U.S. investments in Venezuela when asked about his newest tactic in a pressure campaign against Maduro, suggesting the Republican administration's moves are at least somewhat motivated by disputes over oil investments, along with accusations of drug trafficking. Some sanctioned tankers already are diverting away from Venezuela. Quote, we're not going to be letting anybody going through who shouldn't be going through, unquote, Trump told reporters earlier this week. Quote, you remember they took all of our energy rights, they took all of our oil not that long ago, and we want it back. They took it, they illegally took it, unquote. That's referring to U.S. oil companies that were dominated by Venezuela's petroleum industry until the country's leaders moved to nationalize the sector, first in the 70s and again in the 21st century under Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez. Compensation offered by Venezuelan was deemed insufficient, and in 2014, an international arbitration panel ordered the country's socialist government to pay $1.6 billion to ExxonMobil. The targeting of tankers comes as Trump has ordered the Defense Department to carry out a series of attacks on vessels in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific Ocean that his administration alleges are smuggling fentanyl and other illegal drugs into the United States and beyond. At least 104 people have been killed and 28 known strikes since early September. The strikes have faced scrutiny from U.S. lawmakers and human rights activists who say the administration has offered scant evidence that its targets are indeed drug smugglers and that the fatal strikes amount to extrajudicial killings. The Coast Guard, sometimes with help from the Navy, had typically interdicted boats suspected of smuggling drugs in the Caribbean Sea, searched for illicit cargo, and arrested the people aboard for prosecution. The administration has justified the strikes as necessary, asserting it is in armed conflict with drug cartels aimed at halting the flow of narcotics into the United States. Maduro faces federal charges of narco-terrorism in the United States. The U.S. in recent months has sent a fleet of warships to the region, the largest buildup of forces in generations, and Trump has stated repeatedly that land attacks are coming soon. Maduro has insisted the real purpose of the United States military operations is to force him from power. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles said in an interview with Vanity Fair, published this week, that Trump, quote, wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle, unquote, or he leaves. So Maduro could be right that Trump is trying to force him out of power. So why? So they could appoint an American, pro-American person in Venezuela, and they can secure the oil from that country for decades to come. That's going to not win China over too well, because they get 80% of that oil from them. So, you know, Trump and his narrow-mindedness is setting this country up here for a showdown with China, okay, and any other country that Venezuela has been selling oil to. Like I said, I really can't understand why people are not really seeing this man, you know, for what he is, okay? He's a bully. He gets a hair up his ass, and he does these things without consulting what's legal or what isn't legal, sending the military in there to do these things. And, you know, I feel like, you know, doesn't anybody ever ask questions? You know, or is it that Trump has somehow got everybody around him in this fucking hypnotic state where he just tells them what to do and they do it? You know? I mean, I just can't understand why, you know, somebody would take an order from him and go ahead and do it without wondering, in the smallest degree, whether this seems like a logical or legal mission or whatever. You know what I'm saying? For the Navy to go in there and do what they're doing. We're getting told that it's to fight narcotics, okay? We're being told it's to get back oil that was taken from us. All these reasons here don't really seem to make much sense, okay? Considering after what Maduro was saying about how he knows that they're trying to force him out. And that means that there's a bigger thing going on than just narcotics and oil, you know. Oil is probably the more important thing, because that's something that, you know, every country, I think, really has a stake in gaining more of. The United States mostly, but yeah, I mean, every country's got, I mean, especially Russia right now. Russia is like, I mean, their oil, excuse me, their oil facilities have been bombed by Ukraine. And from what the things that I've read about it, I mean, Russia's hurting right now, you know, oil-wise. How do we know that this isn't in some way helping out Putin? If the United States can get control of Venezuela somehow, and then they could start sending oil to, I mean, that would be, you know, I don't know. Like I said, it seems to me like it's weird how things are happening in certain ways as you watch this. I mean, Russia's, you know, losing their grip here in Ukraine. Their military is getting depleted. Their oil supplies are dwindling. And then now this shit happening in Venezuela. You know, they're seizing oil tankers, and on the side they're blowing up boats that might be considered narco terrorists, okay, to try to sweeten the pot for the public eye. You know, remember, this is a man that grifts constantly, and I feel like he's grifting us right now. Distraction, okay. And I feel like there's a lot going on here that we're not seeing, and we're not ever going to get the truth out of this current regime we got in the White House. We're not going to get the truth. So anyone out there who knows for sure that's what this is about, okay, you're just not interested in, you know, digging deeper, okay? You got to look past the headlines. You got to look at the story as a whole. You can't just take what your illustrious leader is telling you as fact, okay? Because that guy has never uttered a fact in his fucking whole life, okay? This man is a practiced liar. He's lied about everything, okay? So, yeah, I just, like I said, it's really just a matter of time until something really bad, you know, happens. I mean, you can't tossing lit matches around, you know, and not expect explosions or something, you know, and that's what Trump's been doing here. I mean, at least that's the way it looks to us, like what he's doing. I think there could be a plan here, but it's not the plan we've been told, okay? I mean, if China was abducting oil tankers, you know, off the coast of Taiwan, you know, like we're doing in Venezuela. I mean, the U.S. would be nuking Beijing over that. Okay, so Maduro has every reason to be, you know, resistant to what's happening. Okay, he's got every right to defend his country against what he sees as illegal, because these things are happening in international waters. That's something where the UN is supposed to step in. Okay, but again, where the hell are these people? Where is the UN and all of this shit going on? Where is the UN? Okay, what the hell did we create them for? They're supposed to stop potential wars from happening by bringing people to a table and working things out. They're not doing a damn thing. They put laws out there that aren't supposed to be violated, but guess what? They're being violated all the time, especially with Trump. And where the hell is the UN? You know? I mean, it's gotten so bad that their inept ability to do anything, that other countries feel like they have to arm themselves now more than ever, because they don't feel like they're safe anymore. They don't feel the UN has any clout anymore. Without the United States at their beck and call, the UN is nothing. Okay? So we're all going to go back to pre-World War II era style thing where, you know, how easy, I mean, if you've studied history, you'll see how easy, you know, World War I started. Okay? Because without a UN or you know, of a kind, the League of Nations or whatever the hell they call it, without that, these wars were like dominoes that would start one here, then this country was allied to this country, then that country would get involved with a war, then they would be under attack from this country who was allied to that country. You see, then there was no neutral area to stop the war as it went. It just went on and progressed. Okay? And that came to then they developed the League of Nations after World War I. Then World War II started, okay? And after that, we had the United Nations, okay? So, like I said, here we are, we're actually ignoring the United Nations, and we're all going back to the way things were at the beginning of the fucking 20th century. That's 100 fucking years or more, okay? That's where we are going here. All because of Trump, really. I mean, sure, there's been, you know, I'm sure countries have been thinking about building up their military since Russia started its shit there with Ukraine. But with Trump and that little back and forth between Vladimir Zelensky and Trump, that was telling. The rest of the world saw that as a big fucking problem. We thought, you know, we were sitting here and saying, oh, Trump's such an asshole. Yeah. But the other countries were looking at this in a bigger scope. They were saying, this guy is not going to be on our side. This guy would actually side with the other side. We can't trust them to be on our side if we need them. Okay? You saw what he's doing. He's confusing victim versus abuser here. He was making Zelensky look like he's the abuser and Russia was the victim. That's what Trump was doing, and that was scary. Okay? That was scary. The rest of the world saw that, and they got scared. They're saying, this guy, we can't trust him. We can't trust Trump. He's not going to, he doesn't recognize Zelensky as the guy trying to defend himself against an aggressor. He's on the side of the aggressor, and he's trying to make Zelensky look like he's the aggressor. And you know, and you even had people on the right wing in this country saying that he started the war, not Putin. They forgot how that started. That Putin was constantly lining up military assets along the border to Ukraine, and he was telling the rest of the world, "Oh, this is just an exercise. We're not going to do anything." You even had people over here saying, "Oh, this isn't going to lead to a war." Just a week or two before it actually happened. And then all of a sudden, the tanks rolled right through the border and bang, all the shit hit the fan. Okay? That's when, you know, it was too late then to find out, oh, he's been lying to us. Okay? But, you know, everybody, I mean, under the Biden administration, they were trying to weigh the possibility that this was not a training thing. But, you know, I think in a way, you know, they were hoping that it wasn't going to lead to a war, but I could see that that's what was going to happen. I'm surprised that other people in the Biden administration didn't recognize that, okay? Because I wouldn't have trusted Putin as far as they could piss, but for some reason the United States felt they could, you know, they were hoping. But no. That's how it started. It wasn't Ukraine massing its military on the border, it was the other way around. Ukraine was bringing some military there just to make sure that, you know, you guys stay on your side of the line here, okay? No. And that's the way it started. So, like I said, this is when the world saw that Trump was going to take the side of Russia, like, oh, you guys are going to start World War III, you know. It's like, who's the aggressor here? Everything would have been fine if Russia would have stayed on their side of the line, okay? But they chose to come across, guns blazing. What am I supposed to do? Just sit there and let them ram their ass up? You know, I mean, come on. He was the leader of the country. He had a responsibility to defend it, okay? And he comes to the United States because, you know, they didn't really have the military really to match it. They needed help from outside. But because they weren't a member of the UN, you know, it was more difficult for them to get help. But the United States, you know, and some countries were, you know, sending them assets and stuff like that to help. But, you know, everybody was too afraid to go full bore, old Till Boogie here to defend Ukraine because they didn't want to start World War III with Russia because they figure Russia will launch their nukes if they see that we're helping them. So Ukraine became the de facto land where we're fighting Russia through Ukraine, sort of like an undeclared war, but Ukraine is the battleground, you know. Anyway, there's no point in rehashing it. Most of you people understand what I'm saying. But yeah, it's sad that the rest of the world now feels like they got to beef up their military because of the fact that, you know, the United States has weakened. We've lost our footing. Our government is, you know, mired in scandal and corruption, and we have the wrong guy at the wrong place at the wrong time. Okay, we really should have listened to Kamala Harris when she warned us about where this was going to lead us, and she was right. Okay, I don't care whether you like her or not, she was right, and you know it. All right, so that's it for today. I hope everybody has a great upcoming holiday. Subscribe, comment, and share. Keep your ears open for health issues out there. And, you know, because the holidays are coming up, it should be expected of us that we try to be nicer to each other, you know, if you feel you can do that. And people can be appreciative of it. So please try, and I will talk to you again later. So take care, everybody.